Hello, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Real Shame. It's a weekly podcast where we talk about our movie blind spots, lists of shame, movies that we've missed. My name is Andy.
And I'm Adam.
And we thought that we would start off not only this episode, but probably every episode that we do. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Talking about things, talking about movies and TV shows and things that we've kind of been watching over the last week or however long it's been since the last episode that we shot. And, just kind of diving into that before we dive into our main course, our main film that we're going to review. So,
Yeah.
Adam, what have you been into lately? What have you been watching?
So it's been a pretty busy week for me. So the only movie I really got to watch was Wild Rose. Have you seen Wild Rose?
I've not seen Wild Rose.
So Wild Rose has been getting a lot of praise for Jeff C. Buckley's performance. And it takes place in Ireland. It's about an Irish lady that wants to become a Nashville country singer. And I really dig those kind of movies. I like the kind of behind the scenes, like this is how music gets made. These are how artists are kind of thing. And I thought it was pretty good. I don't know if it's as great as the reviews I read and I've heard the buzz kind of leading up to it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was still a pretty solid film.
I think I may have seen a preview for it at some point, but I really haven't heard that much about it. Is it worth me checking out?
Yeah, I say it was. It was. I was just thinking it's really funny because I read one Amazon Prime review for the movie, and he was just like lampooning it because he couldn't understand a word she was saying because of the accent, and he was like, "I wish there were subtitles."
I could probably turn on the closed captioning. I don't know, but yeah, I can see how that would be a problem.
But I thought overall it was a good movie, and she's nominated for a BAFTA, so it'd be interesting to see if she wins.
All righty.
What about you? What have you been seeing?
I have not had a super busy week, so I've actually watched a few things. Weirdly enough, I've been revisiting some 90s Nicolas Cage films. So I've seen them all before.
What's the reason for that?
I do not know. I think I was just kind of perusing the list, and I was like, you know what? I haven't seen this in 20 years or whatever, so I decided to watch it. I watched Brian De Palma's Snake Eyes. I watched John Woo's Face Off, and I watched Con Air. I can't remember who directed
Wait,
that.
I thought you haven't seen Face Off before.
No, I have seen Face Off,
Okay,
and
okay.
I hated it.
Do you still hate it?
I actually, believe it or not, time has kind of softened my stance on it. I did not hate it as much this time. It's definitely goofy. It's definitely not meant to be taken seriously. Not that I took it seriously the first time I watched it, but watching those 90s movies or 80s movies or whatever that you haven't seen in a long time, I think a lot of it you watch through nostalgia colored glasses or something like that. So you're probably not as nitpicky as you were. At least I'm not as nitpicky about those films as maybe I was the first time around. I liked Snake Eyes the first time I saw it back in 98 or whenever it came out.
No.
I still like it now, but I like Brian De Palma. And I don't mind Brian De Palma doing Brian De Palma things.
He's not a good director, I don't think.
Okay, we'll get to the Untouchables at some point, but anytime Brian De Palma does Brian De Palma things, where there's the split screen or the split diopter, or whatever you call it, the overhead camera that goes across many rooms or something like that, I dig that stuff because that's shamelessly De Palma doing De Palma and channeling Hitchcock or whatever he likes to do because he's a big Hitchcock guy.
What's the big standout of the? How many did you see?
I saw 3: Face Off, Snake Eyes, and Con Air.
So what's the standout of them?
I don't know. I think I like Snake Eyes the best out of the 3. I know everybody loves Con Air, and I don't dislike Con Air, but I don't know. I think I like Snake Eyes the best. It's the most serious of the 3, even though it's also really cheesy. Yes. Con Air is definitely silly as all get out, and so is Face Off.
So when I picture Snake Eyes, what I see is the box art of it because I used to work at Blockbuster and see that all the time. And it was like the purple, what was it, leopard print, purple and green leopard print or something like that.
Something like that.
It was so bad.
Yeah, something like that. Weirdly enough, I would. Sometimes I get Snake Eyes and 8mm confused. Although they're completely different films and completely different subject matter, but they both star crazy, crazy Nicolas Cage.
And then we'll have to get into Mandy and stuff like that probably later.
Right.
So anything else that you've been watching?
The only other things that I can think of note would be I rewatched another 1990 film called Quick Change, which is a bank robbery. Well, the bank robbery happens at the beginning of the film. The rest of the film is Bill Murray, Gina Davis, and Randy Quaid trying to get the heck out of New York City. What's interesting about this film, which I have seen it before, but what's interesting about this film is that it definitely could not be made today, because the whole gist of the movie is basically they can't find their way out of New York City. Nowadays, they would just immediately call an Uber or something like that.
GPS.
Have GPS, do something like that. They'd be able to get out of the city immediately. But that literally is they're like, where are we?
Yeah.
Oh, we can't. Oh, the Statue of Liberty's been obscured by this large truck, so we don't know where we are geographically and all this stuff. It definitely could not. It would not work at all today, or it would work today only if you said it in the past. But
How would Baby Driver work if he couldn't make his way around San Francisco?
exactly. Same kind of deal. All right.
So with that, I think we should move into our main feature review.
Yes. So our main feature that we picked for this episode is not Citizen Kane. It's not Casablanca. It's not anything like that. It's actually a movie from 1979, more of a cult classic than a classic, and I wouldn't consider it anything resembling a classic, honestly. It's called Rock and Roll High School, directed by Alan Arkush. Arkush?
Oh, I'm sorry. We don't let any more mice in here. They've been exploding all over the place. Oh, you got headphones. Great. Just don't get too close to the PA. Wait. Here's your stuff. Okay, go on in. Enjoy the show.
And also kind of co-directed by Joe Dante, apparently,
and he wrote it
uncredited.
too.
And he wrote it. And I think Roger Corman, of course, was like an executive producer on it. It was originally going to be called Disco High, from what I understand. Yeah. And they ended up, I think disco was on its way out in 1979. Yeah. It was already dying. So they decided to have a rock group. I believe they pitched around some rock groups to kind of star in it. Cheap Trick was mentioned at one point, but they wound up with the Ramones, who are the main kind of focus of the movie. They are the rock and roll in Rock and Roll High School. And I'll just say this right off the bat. If you're not a Ramones fan, you're really, really going to hate this movie, because that's basically all the movie is some Ramones music videos. At one point, there's a Ramones concert, and it's pretty much a real-time concert, right? I don't know that they abridged any of their songs, and they play a few. I mean, their songs are short because they're punk songs, but they still, I mean, it's basically a Ramones video / concert with a few comedy scenes surrounding that. So a thinly veiled, a thin kind of plot connecting those. Yeah. But that's it. Now, I don't hate the Ramones, but I pretty much hated this movie, honestly.
Yeah,
who do you think?
I just had one question, and I was like, why? Why am I watching this?
Yeah.
Right?
Wow. Because that's what we do on this show.
Yeah. I don't want to. I hate, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I really just don't want to get on this and just shit on movies and stuff like that.
Sure.
But I think the biggest thing for me with this movie was I had a lot of trouble getting into the movie. I had a hard time just kind of not rationalizing what's going on and stuff like that. There's a lot of things that happen in the movie that I think you're just supposed to take at face value because it's a comedy and stuff like that, and not really dive into and think too much about. But for me, all those just kind of came to the front, and it just were super apparent to me. Stuff that I normally miss in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
For example, those hall monitors that are in love with, or there's one hall monitor that's in love with Miss Togar. Mm-hmm. Well, so when we get into the movie, you're introduced to Miss Togar, and she's taken over as principal, right?
Scary principal that hates rock and roll.
And she's brand new to the school, right? Yes. Yeah, right. So the hall monitors, how do they know her? How does the guy, how's the one...
He's already in love with her.
Yes.
It was love at first sight.
It was love at first sight. But he already had a poem, when they're introducing her and stuff like that.
Prolific. I don't know. He's quick to write. I don't know.
So there's stuff like that. And then, when Riff is walking through the hallways and she has, the cassette recorder in her earphones, and then they run to the gym teacher, and she's like, Riff can't hear. She's hard of hearing. This is her
hearing aid, right?
Their hearing aid, right? It's I would imagine the gym... it's not the first day of school, right? So I'd imagine the gym teacher would have been seen her before without it?
Yeah.
Or you're like, you know what I mean?
Maybe her ear had a blowout the night before. I don't
Just
know.
listen to the
I love that
Ramones.
you're picking out these things because I didn't think
Yeah.
about any of this stuff, but I do think that stuff that you're saying
I
is
mean,
funny.
and like I said, normally when I watch movies, I'm like in all the way. Like I'm not one of those people that kind of catch that kind of stuff. Like I don't catch continuity errors. I don't catch a lot of things. Like I usually just buy into the movie.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this movie, I was always felt like I was like a viewer and not.
You're like, hey, mice can't explode.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I want to get to that in just a second. But
Yeah.
the other thing that was, I think, I think it would have worked for the movie better would have been if you would have established that the school was crazy. Because like you have that one teacher that's going out and he's like going to a insane asylum, I assume, right? Because he has that weird like graduation cap with the red cross on it, and it's supposedly the way I take it is that the school is so crazy, it's so manic that it's driving the teachers insane.
Sure.
But it seems pretty calm, and like when and maybe like I'm getting a little bit too into like Rock and Roll High School Forever, which I really like as a movie, and I've seen before this.
Yeah.
But I would imagine like Riff Randall's like, basically making the school go crazy, and then like when she's doing her antics where she's, playing the record out and all that kind of stuff, people will be like, oh, that's Riff. She's been doing this for a long time kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's all new to everybody in the school.
Right.
She hasn't done it. So I don't know why that teacher's going crazy.
Gotcha.
Maybe I'm digging it too much into the movie, but that's kind of like where my brain was when I was watching the whole thing.
So before we go any further in the movie, I'll just kind of briefly describe the plot. He's talking about Riff Randell. Riff Randell is, I guess, sort of the main character of the film. She's the one who really, really wants to see the Ramones in concert and is obsessed with the Ramones. And the music videos featuring the Ramones in the movie have her in them as well. It's kind of her fantasies. Her best friend, Kate Rambo, not Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, I was going to ask
Kate,
relation is.
I don't know, it's his daughter. Kate Rambo, she's crazy about the male lead character played by Vincent Van Patten. He plays Tom in the movie. Now, Tom is in love with Riff Randell, or at least wants to go out with her, maybe not in love with. And Kate, Riff Randall's best friend, likes Tom. Mm-hmm. And Tom enlists the help of Clint Howard playing a character named Eagle Bauer. Yeah. And you got to love Clint Howard, always. Like Eagle Bauer has an office. What is it, in the men's room? He has an office set up in the men's room. So you were talking about kind of some of the surreal touches that are in the movie. Maybe it could have used a little bit more of that. You think?
Yeah.
To kind of strengthen the wackiness of the story, maybe.
I think honestly, when I watch it, I kind of want more Rock and Roll High School Forever than Rock and Roll High School, because I feel like Rock and Roll High School, like
more Corey Feldman, less PJ Souls.
Because I feel like, and more Eradicators, right? Because that's the name of this band. I feel like
more sniffing urine.
Yeah, yes, that's the best part of the whole movie. So I feel like with Rock and Roll High School Forever, they saw Rock and Roll High School, and I don't know this to be a fact.
Sure.
But I feel like they watched Rock and Roll High School and they felt the same way I did, where they're like, it kind of doesn't make sense. It's kind of weird. It's kind of fun, but it's a good idea, and let's just do it better. And I feel like they did it better because you have Corey Feldman and his friends terrorizing the school. You have, the principal who's named Vader, right? And I guess when they were filming the first Rock and Roll High School, they didn't know about Star Wars. I would imagine so.
I mean,
79, right? And
it came out after Star Wars, but they
probably were filming during Star Wars.
Right, they didn't care enough.
Yeah. And then I just feel like that person's a higher threat and stuff like that. So and the funny thing is that the Rock and Roll High School Forever also has Eagle Bauer as a character. So I wonder if it takes place in the same school. And so there's some other things that kind of drove me crazy, or I didn't get, like Vince Lombardi. To me, this movie
is Vince Lombardi High School, right?
To me, this movie's based in California, right?
Yes.
Then why does California care about Vince Lombardi? Right? I'm not a sports guy, right?
Maybe they just did that so they could use the Packers colors or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just as simple as that. But yeah, that's a good point. It was actually filmed at Mount Carmel High School, which was a defunct. It was no longer in use. whenever they filmed it. And towards the end of the film, they actually blow up part of the school, and apparently they actually did blow it up.
Oh, really?
They blew up some of it. I think the school itself was completely demolished in the early 80s, but actually the explosions you see in the film, I think they're actually blowing up part of the school because nobody used it anymore. It was
I
closed.
thought it was really bad special effects. I honestly did.
I don't know. But I was going to say, getting back to the plot, Tom tries to get Eaglebauer to help him go out with Riff, and he ends up having him go out with Kate, and they end up falling for each other. But honestly, nobody cares about that because, to me, the movie just wasn't funny. I mean, I think I chuckled, mind you, maybe one time in the movie, and it was when Tom, played by Vincent Van Patten, I don't want to keep saying that, Vincent Van Patten, is talking on the phone with the two girls. They call him from a payphone, which payphones don't exist anymore. Yeah. They call him from a payphone.
Is the van thing with the sign?
Yeah, and they tell him they're going to go to the Ramones show, and he lets out a high-pitched scream and bites the phone. I think that kind of mildly amused me, but that was about it. I mean, the rest of the film fell completely flat. Yeah. The humor was completely flat. Exploding mice fell flat.
The mice stuff like set me on edge. Like I think they really like put those mice in harm's way. Like I don't think the SPCA or the
I don't know.
I don't think they were there.
She definitely dangles the mouse from his tail for a long time.
And then they're like shaking the cage and stuff like that with the mouse in there. It was very uncomfortable.
That's true.
So like if you're nervous about animals getting hurt, kind of like I am, I would probably skip those scenes. I don't think they added anything to the movie.
No.
But that said, the highlight of the movie for me was when, and the part where I laughed and I enjoyed the movie, I was amused by the movie, I guess, was when the giant rat attends the Ramones concert.
Yeah.
Like, that was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely unexpected for me. I didn't find it all that funny, but I was like, okay, what? That again, kind of a surreal touch that they add, but.
And his mom comes later, like rollers in her hair and stuff like that.
Later, that's true. It's actually funnier now that you're recounting it to me. But I think at the time, I just was like, I got to sit through an entire Ramones concert.
I think the Ramones concert was the best part of the whole movie. And I don't like the Ramones, but I mean, everything else in the movie just wasn't working for me. So at least when we were in the Ramones stuff, it was kind of interesting. The other thing I wanted to say real quick, was when she has those fantasies, like about when Riff Randell has those fantasies about the Ramones, there's a parallel to that in Wild Rose. Like she's constantly going through her day fantasizing about being a country singer, and she imagines like band members like in spaces where she's at and stuff like that.
Are they playing in the shower like they are in Rock and Roll High School?
There's one part where she's cleaning a house and they're in there, but I don't think there's I don't think they have. Was it Johnny Ramone who plays the guitar? I think it's Johnny Ramone who's like playing the guitar in the shower.
I don't know. I just know Joey, the really tall, lanky one, skinny one.
What else was I gonna say?
Well, I'll say while you're thinking of that, the thing about Rock and Roll High School is it's not that I dislike any of the people that are in it. I like PJ Souls. I mean, I don't have much of an opinion on Vincent Van Patten. If you turn on your television now, you're going to see him more than likely hosting World Poker Tour because he's been doing that show forever and ever. He's actually the son of Dick Van Patten, the father on 8 is Enough. And he started out as a child actor just like Clint Howard did, and just like Clint's brother, Ron, obviously. But I like Clint Howard. I like the music teacher's played by Paul Bartel, Mr. McCready, and the principal, Evelyn Togar, is played by Mary Warrenov. And Paul Bartel and Mary Warrenov were actually really good friends in real life. They made a number of movies together. Their most famous movie is called Eating Raoul, the one that's most well known. And they actually played the same characters that they play in Eating Raoul in a very small cameo in a movie that is near and dear to my heart, 1986's Chopping Mall, which
Jim Wynorski. I'm a big Jim Wynorski fan.
And Chopping Mall has Dick Miller as one of the janitors, and Dick Miller plays the chief of police at the end of Rock and Roll High School whenever they're blowing up the school and they refuse to leave. And of course, Dick Miller has appeared in, I think, just about every Joe Dante film ever made. So it's always nice to see Dick Miller. You know exactly who I'm talking about. You may not know his name, but if you saw his face, you'd be like, oh yeah,
he's one of those face guys.
He definitely does. He gets killed by Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. He's the owner of the gun shop in that film. So
The other thing I wanted to go into a little bit was that I found really interesting was I like how they kind of flipped the tropes of high school movies. Like I like that the the head football player, the quarterback, was kind of like this shy guy that didn't really have a lot of mojo, didn't have a lot of cachet with all the kids and stuff like that. And I think if you're thinking about a school, a rock and roll high school, it'd be kind of cool where the outcast, people are kind of running the school, and where you think as normal, popular people aren't really running the school and kind of outcast. And I think that would have been like an interesting way to kind of frame this movie and kind of go on with it if they had higher they had higher aspirations with the movie. I'd hate to say that, but
Yeah, I really honestly think that this film, I'm sure it was very popular back in 1979 because I think back then, obviously, you've had high school films. High school films kind of originated in the 1950s along with the birth of rock and roll. You started having things like Rebel Without a Cause, Blackboard Jungle. Then you move on into the 60s, 70s. You've got American Graffiti, movies like that. And honestly, high school movies and teenage kind of movies were a dime a dozen back then, and they kind of still are today. I think it was enough back then for late 70s high schoolers or teenagers to go see a movie like this. I mean, again, provided they didn't despise the Ramones, because they probably would hate it then. But to go see a movie like this and just have a good time, enjoy it, and go, yeah, hey, that's us up there. Hey, we like to drink beer. We like to have sex. We like to hang out and drive around and cruise our cars and listen to punk or listen to rock or whatever. Yeah, it's probably fine for them 40 years ago, but I don't think it holds up well at all today, unfortunately, because I didn't set out to hate this movie.
Yeah.
I just didn't like it. I didn't care for it.
I have another question, and I know we're probably going super long with this, but I'm wondering if Rock and Roll High School is like one of the first, or like a progenitor to high school sex comedies, because you have that part with like the girls doing the dancing and the gymnastics in the gymnasium, right?
Right.
And to me, like, they're wearing like, kind of tight outfits and stuff like that. And the camera seems to linger, and you have those hall monitors staring at them. I'm wondering if that was like the basis for movies like Porky's to Come Later, and all the American Pie movies, and Mallrats, and all those kind of movies kind of built off of that. Because I was looking, and it looked like Porky's came out in 81.
Yeah, a little after Rock and Roll High School.
So what do you think about that? Do you think this was just like, because it feels like they were trying to titilize a little bit.
I think I would agree with that. And I think there's other films that kind of teen films that kind of came out in the late 70s, like Malibu High, and there's some others whose names escape me right now. But they definitely, they're more about, like, as you said, titillation, and maybe a little more, not lewd necessarily, but they would kind of pave the way for, because, in the 80s, they definitely had a lot of sex comedies, Last American Virgin, Losing It, Porky's, all that kind of stuff that would come later on. So that's probably a fair assessment, I would say. Absolutely.
So for me, I actually rewatched portion of the movie today, like in preparation for this.
Yeah.
And I liked it better than I did when I first watched it.
Rock and Roll High School.
I did.
Okay.
There's some nuances that I didn't catch the first time that I'm catching now. Like whenever Kate Rambeau sits down, like you can tell she has eyes for the quarterback and stuff like that. And that's stuff that I really didn't catch. So I would say that if you're curious, it's probably well worth the watch. Just kind of know going into it, it feels really long, the movie, and you're gonna have about 20-minute rock concert in the middle. And it's gonna be all Ramones movies, or all Ramones songs.
Music, sure.
But it did have actually a pretty eclectic mix of music on there, right? Because there was like, wasn't there like a Wings song, like a Paul McCartney song?
Yeah. There's other artists on the soundtrack other than the Ramones, but the Ramones is what stuck out to me, because so much of the movie deals with the Ramones and her love of the Ramones. So that's pretty much what I remembered from it. Ramones.
All right, that concludes our review of Rock and Roll High School. So next time we're going to talk about another movie that's in the same genre, and that movie's going to be
Fast Times at Ridgemont High from 1982.
So this is a movie that we've both seen, so we're going to use that to kind of compare and contrast with what we saw with Rock and Roll High School.
Yeah.
So please email us, realshame@gmail.com, subscribe to the podcast, follow us on Instagram, and we will see you next time.